Welcome to Talkin' Tone, where professional musicians, engineers, producers, and techs like myself all get together and discuss guitar tones. Today, we're on location in North Hollywood with one of my longtime bestest friends, Lon Cohen.
I'm not saying nothing.
I knew
I'm
you were
not saying nothing about nothing.
Already you screwed
You set
it up.
up all
Already.
this equipment for no reason.
I'm out of here. I'm done.
All right.
Yeah. How you doing, man? You good?
Good, yeah.
Awesome.
Good.
Well, it's a pleasure to come to your facility here. And you and I have been around the music business a lot of years. And especially you go back to the original North Hollywood gang, what I call the North Hollywood gang, or one of them, and that being Bob Bradshaw, all you guys that were down on Weddington.
Andy Brower.
Andy Brower.
Justin McCarthy.
Oh, my God.
Jeff Jonas,
Walter Rice.
Yeah.
And I hate to jump ahead straight away, but there was a gentleman that came into your shop at that time to work on amplifiers.
Reinhold Wagner.
There you go.
Yeah.
And maybe a lot of people don't even have no clue about that part.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the listeners never knew, that there was the North Hollywood, the Andy Brower scene. Andy, had put together, it was the place to get gear.
Mm-hmm. And
you were there.
Mm-hmm.
At that time. And I remember first coming down there to making music and talking to Joey Brassler and actually buying it was called it was a Bradshaw rig then. It wasn't even custom audio yet.
Right.
So,
right.
And I know there was a vast assortment of amplifiers and guitars, but amplifiers in particular, at that point of time, as we used to call it, that particular juncture.
Mm-hmm.
Inside joke, by the way.
$5 word. Good. Okay. Keeping track.
But anyways, Marshalls were a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember what used to go out mainly as a rental for sessions?
Wow, that's interesting. That's going back. So we're talking, we're talking 80s, early 80s maybe, mid 80s, something like that. I honestly don't really remember. I know that it was right around when modified Marshalls were big. Right. So you had the Jose mods. Right. You had a bunch of these guys were kind of coming out of the woodwork and doing really interesting mods like Lee Jackson.
Yeah, right.
You had a guy named Ernie Brandy I think he was from San Francisco.
Right.
He did it, and I still have that amp, and that amp was used on all these old Great White records. But some of those, they were modified Marshalls was kind of a big deal. So we were seeing this. It was the 80s. It was the time of big racks, big sound, modified, just more, better.
Yeah.
And
Van Halen. Eddie. Eddie got amps from your facility, correct?
Yeah.
He did, but he had some of his own.
He was his own world, but. He would come to us just to he would go to the 7-Eleven to pick up.
So there was always Lukather was an item at your shop.
Well, at that time it was all the top studio guys. You had Michael Landau, Steve Lukather. There were guys that Dan Huff, who's now huge in Nashville. Right, but a lot of those guys were, some of them just sort of faded into obscurity, but they were just such talented guys.
Amazing.
And these are guys, if you read liner notes, you'll see these guys on some of the top records that were made back then.
Yeah. Liner notes, album liner notes.
Yeah.
See, but now you don't get that. You'd have to go on and research, Wikipedia or some. Who did this record?
Right.
You just, it's different now. It's totally different. But I wished I'd have been around at that. I was around during that period, but I wasn't in North Hollywood doing sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a time where a lot of people did rent a lot of gear. And we were talking earlier about the length of, a record project could be 6 months, a year, 2 years.
It was a fat business back then, and there was lots of money. And like you said, there were records. There were actually, whether it was CDs or records, whatever it was, there were widgets. You could go into a record store and you buy them.
Right.
And they were selling lots of them. Right. So money was flowing in. And remember, you're going out there, whether it was a record or a CD, and you're spending $16, $18 and selling millions of them. So money was just flowing. And so bands would come from all over the world to LA because you could get the Dan Huffs and the Michael Landaus and all the
cats were all here.
All the cats, the studio guys, and you could, and I don't know what was going on in the rest of the world, but I doubt they had the availability of some of this great gear. It was people were just really discovering that you could get really good gear to go in and record with.
Right.
In the old days, I think you just, whatever the band used,
they brought
you threw them in a room and you put a microphone in front of it.
You didn't call a company and go, hey, send me down a 100-watt Marshall and a 4x12. Yeah, right.
I remember getting calls I used to answer the phone. I used to manage Andy Browers, as you know, back in the 80s. And I remember getting phone calls and somebody saying, hey, do you guys have a Martin 12-string acoustic guitar? And I remember Andy saying, no, we don't. And he's ready to hang up the phone. I go, hang on a second.
Let me get my credit card out.
Yeah, really. It was like, but I just saw the opportunity. I said, we got to get what these people want. And so it really started, I remember buying, in fact, this Marshall cabinet right here was one of the first Marshall cabinets I ever bought, because Andy had a couple old vintage ones, but someone called up and they wanted, either his were rented out or whatever, and needed another one. And so I remember going out and getting a pair of these back in the early 80s, and we needed them. So it was, people started getting, the message that you could get stuff, so we kept getting more and more. And when people would call for things we didn't have, we would just run out and get it.
Go out and get it. And that's kind of how your business evolved.
Absolutely.
I mean, you just came out of that era of investing and getting this amp at this time for this particular project, and then started your own business, which is now Lon Cohen Studio Rentals. And you're still in North Hollywood. You're still in the neighborhood. And I'm still coming back to this neighborhood. And I sometimes find it hard to get away, really. And then, like we just walked on the street and saw Dave Friedman, and it's like this whole group of people is still really here.
It's fun to run into guys like David Friedman that have been around that long. There's not a whole lot of us that are just kind of old timers that have, that have really been around and stuck around. You talk about North Hollywood, but really just in the music business
California,
in general.
True. And that's true across England and Florida or wherever. But the nucleus, LA was, and New York, of course, but in England, London was the recording mecca.
For sure.
And, a lot of records came out of this area, and my whole thing with the Talkin tone is I'm an old 70s sound guy, and if you look around us, we had some Marshalls and, AC30s. And, to me, I mean, that's where it came from. That's where it started. Fenders, really. The old amps and the sound it's hard to beat, really. It's hard to beat that old amp sound.
Well, you raise a really good point, because guys like us that are, we run the risk of sounding like our parents, and we talk about those were the good old days.
Old codgers.
Yeah, I mean, we can sit here and go, man, that was like the real tone. But it's like, the truth is that things change, the industry changes.
They do.
I've got a warehouse full of really great sounding vintage stuff that has been used on a lot of records, but quite honestly, the bands that we work with now, bands that are on television and doing bands that are renting backline for touring and stuff like that, they don't really care about that. They're going for the reissue stuff. They're going for the newer stuff, some little boutique stuff here and there. But, the days of guys that really wanted like an original, 60s AC30 or, like you said, any number of Marshalls that really, people that really cared about tone. There's still a lot of producers around that really get
the old
and care about it. But I think a lot of people are like, as we talked about before, you can go into Guitar Center and get a little box that gets a million different sounds, and you make a record in your bedroom. And listen, as much as I'd like to be the guy saying that's rubbish, the real stuff is those old real Marshalls and Vox AC30s. The truth is that people are making good music.
Yeah, sure.
It's a different world. But to me, and I think to you, it's like old wine. To me, there really is no comparison at the end of the day. But it's an evolution, right? So music and everything else and what they're using, it's evolving into a different thing.
It is a different time, and I'm glad you brought that up before I even got to it, the evolution of what's happening in the business, in the recording part of it anyways. I touch on some of these interviews doing live stuff, and that's part of my thing is live, but really I love to record. And, going back a number of years now since when I worked with you of just being even in the garage, at one of your first shops in the garage, and listening to tones, and taking so much pride in my tone. Oh my God, listen to that! I can't wait till Toby Wright hears that, or somebody. Or I remember Toby used to ring down the shop and go, "Hey man, I'm doing this or this. Could you?" I used to wire cabinets, a special impedance, to get different tones out of it.
Yeah, mixed speakers. I remember we used to do hybrids. And stuff.
Straight up Celestion 30s and 20s. And I remember you always said, "Oh, don't send out that one. That it's only 80 watts really, but it's 100 watt. Oh no, the 100 watt head. And you were right, you know, but it was a tone, man. It was, and you know, it used to be like, man, if you were getting that magic at that moment, then it blew up.
Right. Well, like they say, like the shit sounds the best just before it blows up.
All amps were like that.
Yeah.
But you know, we were talking earlier, you had quite the Marshall collection. I mean, you had from the casket, I guess, what did they call it? The badge,
casket tag, or the metal badge.
The metal badge Marshalls, the original JTM 45s. I mean, you had such a wide variety, and I do know that there's one right behind you that used to be one of my favorites. It's got the one. John Sir Oomph button on it.
That's a super, like a 70s super lead.
The 73, 74. John used to always say those were his favorite amps to mod.
Yeah, that, speaking of which, is we were talking about the 80s when modded Marshalls were really big, and he was definitely one of my favorite. Yeah, I mean those things are so amazing. You know, just whatever he did to it. I mean,
you know, I know the Jose mod was a big deal, but I got to tell you, John's mods really had brought out the low end. It gobs a low end for days.
Yeah, I mean, it has this is called, I don't know if the viewers can see it. It's called Oomph. He labels it Oomph. Yeah. And when you play that and you can feel like it's like the air comes up underneath you, and it really, it's alive, and it really, really works. It's really a wonderful, feature of that amp. But just in general, it's a rich, thick, I mean, it's got all the best qualities you want, in my opinion, of a modified Marshall, and but they all have different characteristics, so it's kind
it's like cooking.
If we took one of the other ones out, or we go,
oh my God, listen to that.
Yeah, exactly.
I just I go back. I still my passion, and yours as well, is for the old vintage tube amps. And I know evolution is, everything's changed. The computers have great plugins, but I'm trying to go back and really push this old school sound and really teach kids that are coming up, because they go, oh wow, I plug into my computer, listen to that, it sounds like Eddie Van Halen or whoever. But really, yeah, maybe. But I'd like to kind of bring back and teach the younger generation tone.
Yeah.
Listen to this. This is how you get this tone. You use this amp or that amp. And in my series, I've already done a couple with amps from Carl Popek, and ones that he's built. And I've taken the same amp, and in one track, it's total like a diesel sound. And then the next track, it's total like an old Fender. And trying to get across the point that you could use 5 guitars with the same amp with different settings and get 5 different sounds.
Absolutely.
If you know what to do.
Absolutely. Well, on the coattails of that, I mean, I think that's the thing that's interesting to me, and talking about how passionate we are about the tone of some of these old, wonderful amps, that I think how I've changed and evolved over the years is I've really talk about guys like Toby Wright and Mitchell Froom, people that really inventive producers that like to try unusual and different things to get like a sound tapestry. Yeah. And I think that what I'm starting to become, I think I was a little snobbish about, that kind of old amp, old guitar thing. But the truth is that you can create limitless possibilities with combination of things. I think it was Toby Wright that did this, where he used an electric nylon string and he doubled it with a Rickenbacker through an orange,
the most bizarre.
I mean, it was so bizarre, but it came across and it was so beautiful. Yeah,
beautiful.
So I think the moral of the story is that you could go into a pawn shop and find some old transistor amp that we would have thought was crap years ago, and figure out a way to weave it into something that's new and interesting and cool. Right. So it's a hybrid. There's these things, are still, you can't, like you said, it's like great wine. Yep. But there's limitless possibilities.
Well, what I'm trying to kind of do, is show people, at my little home studio, how I did something. Go, oh, listen to this. Listen, and this is how I did it. I use this microphone on this speaker cabinet, and I want to share it to everyone so people can get back into that creative style. Talking about blending amps, that 70s show, I guess you might even remember this, I did a session at Conway for the intro. Well, we redid the intro with Cheap Trick, and that was Julian Raymond. Okay. And we used a Marshall and an AC-30. was a JCM 800 and an AC30, and I mean, it's heavy.
Yeah.
You know, it was really good. So your shop, you still have a quite an array of amplifiers. I mean, I look out there and there's a lot going on, and you've provided gear to a lot of records. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I look at your website and you have A to Z. Mm-hmm. I mean, could you just tell us a couple of acts maybe? I mean, I know there's thousands of bands.
It's easier to talk about who I haven't maybe, but really you say A to Z, so right. Aerosmith, literally right. Aerosmith to Zappa, but we've done, I mean, I don't know where to, I mean,
I know it's endless, yeah.
You know, most of the Beatles, except for John Lennon, I never had the opportunity, but, you know, Michael Jackson, Joe Cocker, you know, I don't know, everybody.
Yeah, just a lot of people, yeah. And, you know, back to the old Andy Brower days, I mean, golly, it was just like every band. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, there's so many aspects and all that Toto and, you know, just all, I mean, Toto coming out of, you know, North Hollywood, mm-hmm. you know, basically. Yeah. I mean, Lukather was he was very early doing sessions, 16 maybe.
Oh, yeah.
And then, you know, you work with Landau, mm-hmm. you know, Michael Landau, mm-hmm. and being around those guys for all that time. And back when Lee Sklar, mm-hmm. you know, I mean.
They were like the original, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the original marching soldiers, you know, they were the guys.
The North Hollywood gang.
Yeah. Well, actually, not really true. I mean, going back before that, what was the name of the guys? The original studio guys.
Oh yeah.
There was the Wrecking Crew.
Yeah. Those were the cats. Yeah, and they just brought in their little amp and their one guitar and did the tracks and did millions of tracks.
Right.
They really did Glenn Campbell. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, you really think about Glenn Campbell, Wichita lineman.
Yeah.
That guy. You know, and talking about that, you know, the stories of Leon Russell. You know, the lady bass player that's on the Wrecking Crew that's doing the movie and the documentary, and she's talking about, you know, Leon Russell, and they're sitting around which became cello, and I don't know what it was originally.
It was Ocean Way, actually, I think.
Ocean Way was the big first
Ocean
cello?
Ways.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there were two. They were kind of right next to each other, but there was like an east and a west, and then You know, like we were talking about before, is I still do have a lot of that old stuff, right. You know, old Marshalls and some of the modified stuff. But again, remember, those things were big in the 80s,
right.
and now not quite so much. So now it's, you know, what we're seeing in terms of least of the new bands and the new acts and what they're doing, they're kind of going for, you know, they go for a different sound, I guess, right. and they don't really care so much about the vintage stuff. And some of them, when I turn them on to it, like someone might call up and they might ask for a, you know, I don't want to name any names.
A reissue.
They might reissue something or a newer brand of something that you might get at Guitar Center. They'll ask for that, and I'll go, you know, I'll ask them, what kind of a sound are you going for? Mm-hmm. You know, can you give me some ideas? And I said, well, you may want to, I have a couple things that I think will really blow your mind if you want to check it out. Some of them, they're like open to it and they hear it and they go, wow, this is great, thank you. Some of them are, man, I'm cool, like I'm used to using this thing. That's what I have at home and it's what I want to use.
Right.
I'm going, great, fine.
Right.
And that's what they use.
Right, they're comfortable,
Yeah, so I've kind of like sort of acquiesced and I've sort of just stepped back off of the beat a little bit and let people tell me what they want. And I try not to, you know, get too
push
involved.
Them into some, well, not even push, help them along.
Yeah, I just try and gently, you know, if I think that there could be something that would help them out, great. Otherwise, so what's happened over the years is my backline inventory has gotten into more of that kind of stuff.
Right.
So I still have all the vintage stuff and all the, I mean, so I bring people in here and I take them down and I show them all this amazing stuff. And they're like, you know, okay, cool. And then they go, oh yeah, there's a, you know, Music Man app. I used one of those before. But, you know, it's a changing of the guards. It's a changing of the times. It's an evolution. Right. And so we are seeing, especially since we're doing a lot of television, we do the guest bands that go on Conan, you know, Jimmy Kimmel, Ellen DeGeneres, some of these shows. So when they come on, they're always asking for what they can get when they're touring around the world.
You see, yeah, this is a great point, and this has already happened to myself. You know, I work with Tarka Coney and musical director for Josh Groban, and a couple of years ago when we were starting a tour, he wanted to use a matchless. Tim Pierce had used it on the record because I really want to use a matchless. And I said, okay, call Phil Jameson. And, you know, it's not easy to get a matchless around the world for promo.
Right.
For television stuff. So our decision was to go with a Fender Deluxe. They're readily available.
Exactly.
Everywhere has a Deluxe.
Exactly.
So you're exactly right there.
And probably a reissue.
Well, we had one that was, I hazard to guess it was a '90s, but it was totally built by Roy Blankenship.
Okay,
He'd gone through it, and then the other was a reissue, which I got to tell you, sounded really good.
Yeah, no doubt. You can't take away from it, and it's understandable, because if you're a production manager and you're touring around the world and you blow into like Cincinnati or some town in Iowa, whatever it is, you're gonna get the local backline company, and you're gonna get a reissue twin, and you're gonna get a newer Ampeg SVT, and you're gonna get the cookie cutter stuff. Which, not to take away from it, because a lot of it sounds fine. But so they get it in their mind. So then even when they come to LA, they're going to go on
use what they use.
It's what they're used to. But it's only kind of like the seasoned guys, or guys that know. They go, hey, if we go to LA, we know there's a big variety of stuff we can get, whether it's whatever it is, vintage keyboards. They know they can get anything here. So some of them ask for it, and some of them just go on what they know they can get everywhere else. But what's interesting to me is that, and the last time I saw you too, every single song he had a different, really amazing vintage guitar as well. Like every song.
Sure.
Now to me, when I close my eyes, I would not know if he changed guitars in between songs in the live environment. You live, loud concert and so live. And I'll be honest with you, especially with all the effects and everything like that, if I close my eyes and I re-listen, I couldn't tell you if it was a AC30. Or if it was a Fractal, or if it was a vintage Gretsch or whatever, because it was so, the tone was rich, but it was very complex, and I personally couldn't tell. And I wonder if some of that is just like, if you're the Edge, you can feel comfortable enough. Hey, I want to get different. I'll feel different, and this is what I want to play. But it's not like if you're making a record and you have an old Gretsch going straight into a tweed Fender where you can feel the air, and
absolutely, or a Marshall when you can hear like AC/DC records. I mean, you can almost hear the tubes singing. It's like they got a mic on the back of the tubes. We were talking about this whole being able to hear and distinguish the tones, and some guys have just like amazing hearing, some of these producers. But I remember in the day of, and I know you're going to remember this, when the producers, when I guess it was Monster Cable, came out with the Arrow, plug it in this way, right? And I remember it was, you got it plugged in backwards. I'm like, really? Do you think that the 16-year-old kid in his Volkswagen is going to hear the signal flow going backwards? And now, and I got to tell you, I'm going to do a whole interview and a whole research on cabling. And I've built a lot of rigs, and a lot of rigs, live rigs with long cable lengths, and by using good cable, Megami or Canary and such forth. And I'm going to do a whole testing on cable lengths. I'm going to run frequencies down them at certain levels and backwards and forwards and see. And I got to tell you, I was doing a little research on this Arrow because I was trying to bring up a photo of them. And I can't find a photo of one of those cables. And it looks like Monster Cable's done away with them. They're not around no more. And so I'm reading all these forums about hogwash and all of this. Now, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to have to scientifically look and see how a cable could be made. But it's a sine wave going down a cable. Well,
the thing about it is that it's like the Eric Johnson thing, with the battery. Well, so if you have that acute of hearing, you were talking about producers that we all know that have just incredible hearing. That's wonderful. And so are there people out there that can hear the difference between an oxygen-free cable or if it's an Eveready, cat battery, whatever it is? Sure they are. Does it make a difference at the end of the day when a kid's listening to it in his Volkswagen? That's a whole nother story entirely.
Absolutely.
But it's not either or, obviously.
It's cooking. That's every interview I do with everyone. It's like, you know what? You like it this way. You like it more salt or less pepper, whatever. It's the same with amps. Now, there is a kind of a generalization of what some things should sound like. A Strat, the Hendrix thing, this sounds like that. This sounded like this. This should really kind of, AC30 should have this sound. There is kind of a guideline. But everyone's different.
Everyone's different, although... Remember, even you and I can't hear a dog whistle.
Shh. I still make a living by doing this. And every now and again, I can hear it.
Yeah, right. So. Oh, can you? Yeah, right. Exactly.
Even though now I just put.
Yeah, but your idea of a dog whistle is when your wife goes, it's time for dinner. That's your dog whistle.
Or it's time to come in from that office. Put that wine glass down now, darling.
Right. Exactly.
You know, I find myself now, as she was saying, I'm in the little studio mixing, you know, all the time. And I drive myself nuts. And I was talking to one of your guys up front about this. I'm starting to mix for the computer. You know, because really, most of these I base now how good it sounds coming out of my laptop. If it sounds amazing there, it could sound like total horrible coming out of my amazing playback speakers, but it sounds great coming out of the computer. And now, you know, I even said as another medium to listen back to see how things sound, or the earbuds that come with an iPhone. Because that's really what everybody has, and they plug it into their Mac, and that's what they listen to. So you have to start listening on those. I put on my Sennheisers and go, oh man, that's great. And I just, you know, was starting to figure out, because I, you know, got this home studio, and you got to start figuring out what sounds right to you know. And I'm putting up things, oh man, that sounds great. And then, you know, you process it, and then you come back and put on my Sennheisers, great. And then you plug them little things in and go, oh my God. That's horrible. And then when you make it sound great in them, it sounds terrible in your expensive headphones. It's crazy, you know?
It is. And, you know, but that starts getting into a world that's like really out of my wheelhouse. I know you're
it is more, mine as well.
It's in yours, so you're doing more of that and stuff. And for me, like I said, I've never had the, I hate to use the pun, I've never had the bandwidth for that kind of stuff, because it's just, I'm more of a meat and potatoes, you know, give me an amp. Right. Don't give me too many knobs on it. Just give me one that I can get a good sound out of. And I kind of leave it up to the producers of the world and the engineers of the world and the mixers of the world to do whatever they're going to do to make it work with the earbuds or the headphones or whatever. I just want to be able to provide, say, look, I'll take care of this part of it. When you come in, if you're a musician, I will give you an instrument that's going to be, you know, pristine. You know, it's going to be pristine. It's going to sound. I can tell you that this will be the best example of whatever this amp is, and then from there, have at it.
Yeah, right.
Go to town and play with it and do your own thing. But that's kind of like what I try and do, whether it's a keyboard or a drum or whatever it is. I just have to be able to go. And fortunately, and this is something I really, honestly, I have to give Andy Brower credit for, because I learned this from him. But really being able to listen to a piece of gear, whether it was a guitar, an amp, or whatever it was, and listen to 10 of them and find that one that went, that one, that's the one. And you pick up a guitar and the weight and just get a sense of it without even plugging it into an amp and going, this piece of wood, this chunk of wood is good. I don't care if it's got dead strings on it. I can tell if the chunk of wood is good. Does it have spank? Does it have tonality? Is it? And the same thing with. And I think that once, you know, having learned that, I can then pick the good stuff, and then I can present it to the people, you know, the clients that come to me, and I can go to bed at night going, you know what, I'm not worried about getting a call later on. They're going to know if they got an orange amp from me or whatever, it's going to be the best it can be.
You know, I can testify to that. I was with you a long time, you know, and I kind of miss a lot of that, because when I worked for you, I was in it thick and thin, and we, you know, at that point in time, it was hot. You know, there was a lot of sessions, you know, and we were always had producers calling, hey, I got this, can you come up with this? And we were innovative with our tones. You know, and I did learn a lot from you about the amps. I remember coming in, you know, I've never even seen some of these amps, and you go, oh, that's this, or this is that, and I'd bring it in the room and go, oh my God. I mean, it's just amazing. But that's an acquired, you know, this is something that's acquired.
It is.
And you know, the tracks I've been doing to start with in my series are guitar and amp with a cable, no pedal boards, no nothing. And just trying to, even the lead parts I did on them, and I'm astonished at really going, oh my God, that actually sounds pretty good without it. Big overdrive making it sing. But back to something you just said about a guitar with a piece of wood, you know it's going to sound good if it feels heavy. I have a 62 Harmony I just did a track with, and it feels like a piece of balsa wood. It looks like crap, it's cracked, and it has a 57 D-arm and stick-on pickup, as some of them did in those days. They weren't routed or bolted, they were stuck on. It blew me away. I plugged in and went, and I've been buying some guitars and amps, and most of my guitars I'd never tracked. Would I buy them, knock around? The last thing I wanted to do was come home and play guitar after being on tours for months on end. Now I'm into playing at home, and I put this thing up, and it's mind-boggling. I'm going, oh my God. Listen to that.
There's some hidden gems out there, and I didn't. By the way, didn't mean to say that if you get a guitar is heavy doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to sound good. I think there's something to be said about the character of the piece of wood.
Yeah, you're correct.
Typically, I think a lighter one.
Sure, absolutely.
But it doesn't mean you can't get a light piece of shit either.
Yeah,
you know? There's plenty of those out there.
Just going to say,
Yeah.
And I'm like all those old silver tones, and I'm into the harmony thing. I've got a rocket and a jet and a few things. And this Hollywood Harmony, I think it was $100 somewhere. I picked it up. Now they go for like $1,200.
And that's one of my favorite things in the world is to go into a pawn shop. And I used to do this back in the 70s.
Used to be able to.
Remember, you used to be able to.
Yeah,
well, you kind of can, but it's just different. I mean,
right.
back in the 70s, you'd go in and get an old Strat,
right,
or an old Gretsch, or an old something, or old Martin, and you just we didn't know what those were going to turn into, but you could buy them for a few $100 and fix them up. I used to fix them up and sell them and stuff.
Right.
But nowadays, you can still find that harmony or that. People do know it's a world market now on the internet, but you can go and find these little hidden treasures in certain like thrift shops or pawn shops. Sometimes you get lucky.
Sometimes.
And even if it's a piece of crap that's like a student guitar from the 50s or whatever, sometimes you're pleasantly surprised and you go, this thing's got something to it.
Character.
Yeah, exactly.
Character is the thing. Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, Lon, thank you so much. We're going to have to do it again. We're going to have to get more specific next time. Maybe we could pick some amps, and talk about them. I know you're a busy guy. You got a thriving business here, and
I'm like it's very important, very very busy. I have very very little time for these kinds of things. So I'll see if I can make time for you.
I wish you had more time for me out in the marina, or something like that.
Like I said, amps are out and sailboats are in. That's the new thing.
We go out to eat, and it's like 3 hours.
Yeah.
But we don't see each other for long extended periods of time. So
I know. Well, we'll make good on that.
When we get to it, it's wonderful. And again, thank you so much for being part of this series.
Thank you, my brother. All right.